Hey guys, welcome to another preview video for the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, Guilds of Ravnica. Today is September 18th, 2018, and this is the last day for the preview season. Well, at least the last, meaningful day when it comes to like the bomb rares and the mythics and all the other good cards. And then tomorrow, Wizards will actually spoil the rest of the commons and uncommons and the jank and all that stuff. So we're just going to go through today. We're going to skip tomorrow. And then next week, be on the lookout. We'll have our pre-release guide videos, and these are ones that you don't want to miss out on. It's gonna be a little bit different this go around because we've got some guilds to break down. We've got tons and tons of different abilities to break down. So there's definitely going to be the standard set of videos to come out. So we're gonna definitely do like the combat tricks video, the best commons and uncommons and things like that. But we're also gonna make a set of videos around each of the guilds and what each of the guilds is trying to do. That way, when you actually open up your packs at pre-release or in your draft, you have an idea on what those guilds are doing. And I also want inside those guild videos, we're gonna talk about colors that are splashable. So you're talking about like with Golgari, where it normally is green and black. But sometimes in pre-release, kits, you don't get everything you can use or whatever in your colors, and you need to splash a third color to make a solid deck. So maybe your deck's missing some removal. You're playing Golgari, and black is usually really good at removal, but you got to splash red for some instant damage and things like that to help get some creatures out of the way. So we're going to talk things like that. What colors are good splashable colors for each of the guilds, and kind of align a little bit closer to what the guild's trying to do. So look for that next week, Monday through Friday, a whole bunch of videos coming out. But for now, let's finish up this preview season with our first set of cards, and we start with our white cards. We've got Flight of Equinaughts. This is a uncommon 4/5 for 8 mana. It has Convoke, and it has flying. So, there's really this is kind of a rough card, right? It's 8 mana for a reason because it has Convoke. It's a 4/5, which isn't too bad. I mean, 4/5 in the air is a decent card, right? You've got a decent attack in the air. It's got a nice sized defense, so it's going to take more removal than just deal 3 damage to target creature. It's going to tussle in the air very well because of that 5 defense. So not a bad little card. Obviously sealed if it's in your colors. This is an okay card to put in. You're not satisfied with it, but you're also not like, oh my, this is the best card ever. Is it a finisher? Yeah, it can definitely close out a game. You swing in a couple times with this thing. If you can drop, Silencia is all about dropping tokens early game. With this Convoke, if you can turn this out, 4 or 5 turns earlier, get this down on maybe turn 5, then you're doing just fine. But the other hand, if you're playing against someone that's controlling the board, this is going to be a sad play at turn. When you're tapping 8 mana for it essentially. Next up, we've got Dawn of Hope. This is an enchantment at the rare level for 1 white, 1 generic. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do, draw a card. That's not a bad card, right? Especially in limited, you're trying to fill your hand up after you kind of get everything under control. The other cool thing about this card is it has a static ability or an activated ability rather, 3 generic and 1 white. You can create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. So in the late game, this can just be a token generator, right? And the nice thing is you can pay 4, play a soldier, next turn attack with it, pay 2, because that creature's gonna gain life. You're gonna gain life, and then draw a card. So it's almost like paying 4 to draw a card next turn, which isn't that bad, right? It's a repeatable ability, so you don't have to tap the enchantment or anything like that. So you can, if you've got 8 mana, you can create 2, right? And then you're drawing 2 cards next turn for 4 mana. So at the end of the day, if you've got a couple of life linkers in your deck already, this is a great addition, right? I wouldn't say this is like the best card, that you're looking for. This isn't a win condition. This is just a way to kind of get through your deck a little bit, faster than normal, refill your hand a little bit faster than normal and stuff like that. So not a bad little card. Inspiring Unicorn is next. It's 2 white, 2 generic for a 2/2 Unicorn at uncommon. And whenever it attacks, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. That's really not that bad. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's not that bad of an ability. It's a little pricey for what it does. It's a nice little anthem effect. So, if you got a go wide strategy, this can give a couple extra points of damage in. It's a little bit on the frail side because of the 2 defense, so you just got to be cautious of that. But you might be, if you can get, if you can put this down on turn 5 or turn 6 and then attack the following turn and get 4 or 5 extra points of damage, what are they going to do? Are they going to kill your 2/2 that's pumping everything, or are they going to kill your 5/5 that's getting pumped by the unicorn? One way or the other, they've got to choose something, and the unicorn, the sooner it comes down, the better, obviously. But a turn 4, it's kind of a rough play. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you when you want to play this, depending on what the board state's like. Play something if you've got something more meaningful on turn 4, definitely play it. But this is kind of like this is a middle of the road type of uncommon. We got some red cards here. We've got Hellkite Whelp is a 3/3 for 5 mana with flying. It's an uncommon. And when it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. It's a great way to kind of get those little guys out of the way. That's about it. There really isn't much else for that. Let's see here. Goblin Locksmith is next. It is a 2/1 for 2 mana. It's a common, and when it attacks, creature with defender can't block this turn. There's a few walls and few defenders in this set, but again, I don't think this is you really don't want to play it if you don't have to. 2/1 for 2 mana is just, it's not on curve. There's just not, it doesn't really have a relevant ability. If your opponent's playing defender creatures, then more power to you. Side them in, but other than that, Experimental Frenzy's next. This is a pretty fun card. I'm interested to play with this in both limited and constructed. So it's an enchantment at rare for 1 red, 3 generic. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You also may play the card from the top of your library at any time, but the drawback, you can't play cards from your hand. So, and then you can also pay for 1 red, 3 generic to destroy Experimental Frenzy. So it's got a kind of a self-destruct mode if you kind of get stuck. But the interesting thing about this, and kind of why I'm interested in playing with it, is for 2 reasons. First off, it says play the top card, so you can, it doesn't say cast, so you can play the top card. So if the land's on top, you can play 1 land a turn. So you play your 1 land off the top of your deck, and then all of a sudden, if you run into another land, you're kind of stuck. But it's kind of almost like infinite draw almost. And there's a couple enchantments that allow you to remove the top, or artifacts and enchantments let you remove the top card of your library. So I'm kind of curious if there's a deck built around this that really can it could really shine. It's almost like infinite draw, right? So you've, extinguished your hand, or majority of it, right? And then you play this, and then from now on, you're just playing cards off the top. Now you're a little bit more, what's the word? You're a little more, you don't have a lot of information because you're not holding 7 cards in your hand, right? You're just playing, you're literally playing from this, from the edge of your seat the rest of the game. Unless you have a couple of the other abilities like Surveil, which lets you kind of manipulate the top of your deck. Right, so it's black and blue that have Surveil. So this could go in an Izzet deck, and you can fix with some blue Surveil cards, or you could splash for black and get a little bit of extra Surveil in there. But yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. I'm really interested to play it. It's a rare, so you're not really going to see a lot of them, but definitely try it out. And I'm kind of curious to see what you guys do with it. Next up, we've got Electrostatic Field. This is a wall with Defender. It's an uncommon 0/4 for 2 mana, 1 red, 1 generic. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, Electrostatic Field deals 1 damage to each opponent. So each opponent, we automatically know that that is a huge sign for Two-Headed Giant. So if you're in red, this is a great card to play. Even if you can get like 1 or 2 hits off, right, 2 or 3 damage off this thing, that's fantastic. A 0/4 defender for 2 mana, that's not too bad. That's going to block everything they drop on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and maybe turn 4. It just depends on what's being played or what colors they're in. But this is it's a great defender. It comes down on curve, and then on turn 3, if you can drop 2 or 3 sorceries, instants, whatever, more power to you. Even in 1v1, 1 damage, that incremental damage is key, right? You're basically adding 1 to each one, so shock is now a lightning bolt. Everything gets upgraded 1. You're all that stuff. So next up, we've got green Pelt Collectors next. This is a fantastic card. This will pull you into green. It's a 1 green for a 1/1 elf warrior at rare. When another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, if that creature's power is greater than Pelt Collectors, put a +1/+1 counter on Pelt Collector. As long as Pelt Collector has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has trample. So everyone's kind of comparing this to Experiment 1, which is true. I mean, Experiment 1 was a 1/1 for 1 green mana, and it had evolved. So whenever anything entered the battlefield that was stronger than it, it gets a +1/+1 counter. This is significantly better. It's going to have trample within the first 2-3 creature drops. B, it triggers on both enter and leaving the battlefield. So you're talking play a 2/2 or play a 3/3, it enters the battlefield, it gives them +1/+1 counter, it leaves the battlefield, it gives them a dies, not leaves, dies, gives them a +1/+1 counter. You can't flash them and back and forth and get that extra counter. But just keep that in mind. There's a couple triggers on here that will make this, you could possibly get it, turn 1, play this, turn 2, play, a random something else, a tap land, and then turn 3, play a 3/3. Right, or a 3 whatever, and boom, +1/+1 counter, go in for the attack with your 3/3, and then it leaves the battlefield. Now this creature's got trample. You could very easily get this up to a 4/4, 5/5, 6/6, depending on your curve with your creature. So definitely a build around card, right? You're gonna want stuff that will trigger this. So you don't want a bunch of 2/2s or a bunch of 3s. You want to make sure that you've got kind of like your ultimate curve there. The other benefit for this is, with like Experiment 1, you kind of wanted to go, your 1 toughness, your 2 toughness, your 3 toughness, very sequential, right? This, on the other hand, isn't as pigeonholed to that kind of formula, because if I play a 4/4 before anything else, it's going to get a counter, on the 4/4, and then it'll also get a counter when it leaves. Right, so then if I play like my 3/3 or whatever after my 4, then there's still extra possibility there where I can maximize the +1/+1 counters on it. So definitely a much better Experiment 1 for sure, and it's a elf, so it's elf warrior, so it's two well known. Creature types. Next up, this is an interesting card. I'm kind of hoping we open this at pre-release next weekend, only because it's a blowout just waiting to happen, right? Bounty of Might. It's 4 generic green instant rare. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end turn. Repeat that 3 times, right? So you can give 1 creature +9/+9, +6/+6, or +3/+3, and then spread them out. +3 here, +3 here, +3 here. Any combination of those. So yeah, you give this to an unblocked elf, right? You give it to the Pelt Collector, right? Let's say the Pelt Collector is a 1/1. or let's say it's a 3/3 now, a trample, right? So it's 3/3. So now you're dealing 12. It's a 12/12 with trample, right there. Right, so you attack with your 3/3. It's turn 6. You got a 3/3. You've got a 5/5, and you got a 4/4. Right, and you've triggered your pelt collector those 2 times, and you're like, well, I'm going to attack in with all 3 guys, right? And they're like, well, I have to block these 2, right? I have to block the bigger 2 guys, and they let the pelt collector go through, or maybe they block with like a chump block it, or block it with like a 3/3 or a 2/2 or whatever, just kind of like And you're like, okay, Bounty of Mighty on my pelt collector. Now that's trampling over I can't wait. It's gonna be great. It's going to be fantastic. Moving on, we got a couple more green cards. Might of the Masses is 1 green. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. For each creature you can control. What? Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature you control. Silencia is at your doorstep with like 5 1/1 creatures. And you got this big old trampling rhino thing. Like, you just know this is a great pump spell. I mean, it's uncommon, so you're not going to see a lot of them. It's instant speed, great combat trick, fantastic combat trick. Play it every time, right? If you're in green, you're going to play every one that you get, and then some. Notice how it also says target creature. So in Two-Headed Giant, you can target your partner's creature as well to give it +1/+1 for each creature that you control. So if I've got 6 creatures and he's got 1, I can target his 1 and he gets +6/+6. It's a great card. Generous Stray is next. It's a 1/2 cat at common for 1 green and 2 generic. It enters the battlefield and you draw a card. The art's a little funny. It's a little weird, right? It's a cat. It's kind of strange. It's got a spider, or not spider, a lizard. So it's a little strange. It's a good card. Draws you a card in green. It's a defender. The 3 mana is a little wonky, but it is what it is. Playcrafter's next. It's a 3/2 for 3 mana. And when it enters battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. Good card in limited. Good card. You're going to get their worst creature, but you're getting a 3/2 threat, and one of their cards. And then again, if you can wipe the board, right? Late game, wipe the board, drop this, and then have them discard their card in their hand. There's a lot of ways you can manipulate this to be on your side. So, and it's also, each player sacrifices a creature. So if you can time this out to where you're getting, a decent payback on your creatures, right? So like, for instance, like let's say it's turn 5 or whatever, you clear out a couple of their creatures, with instant removal or combat damage or whatever, and you post combat you play Plague Cure after, and you sacrifice your Generous Stray. You just replaced it, right? Turn 5 or 6. Generous Stray is no longer a card. Like, it's no longer a creature, it's a chump blocker. Instead, now you've drawn a card, force them to sacrifice a creature or discard a card. So, not a bad card. You're probably not going to be playing it on turn 3. I'd probably wait and then clear out some of their jank and then get one of the really good cards. Next up, we got blue and some artifacts. Drowned Secrets is next. This is a rare enchantment for 1 blue, 1 generic. Whenever you cast a blue spell, that's creature, instant, sorcery, anything, planeswalker. Whenever you cast a blue spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. This is a good card for a couple different reasons. There are some definite graveyard shenanigans, reasons to have cards in your graveyard, reasons to fill up your graveyard. It's target player, so you can target yourself. If you're on the mill plan, discard, target your opponent, whatever you got to do. If you can go mono blue and get this out, I mean, milling out someone's 40 card deck at pre-release is not fun for them, but it's definitely a feat to behold for sure. Chamber Sentry is next. It's a 0/0 for X at rare, construct, artifact creature. Enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. So obviously, if you pay all 5, it's a 5/5. It comes with 5 counters. So now it has a second ability. You can pay X, tap it, remove X +1/+1 counters from it. It deals X damage to any target: creature, planeswalker, player. Right. So this thing enters the battlefield with 5. You can pay 5 and ping somebody for 5 damage, or you can keep it around, take 4 off, ping somebody or something for 4, and then it's still a 1/1. So it's kind of it's an interesting card, to say the least. Then it also has, you can pay all 5 colors and return it from your graveyard to your hand. So it's got recursion built in, right? So it's kind of like Walking Ballista, 1.5, but just a little more expensive, right? You can't add counters to it when it hits the battlefield unless you're doing it through some other means, which that would be interesting. I wonder if there's a viable way to do that. That's something we'll have to look into in standard. I mean, obviously there's ways to do it in modern, but mentoring this, although mentoring, this would be good. Mentoring is an interesting concept because, right, so like if you paid all 5 colors, mentoring it would be difficult, right? Because you'd be like, well, I can only way I can mentor this is if I attack with a 6/6. However, yeah, that's so if you paid like if you paid 2 and it came in as a 2/2, and then you could mentor it up through the ranks or whatever, that wouldn't be a bad idea. So that would be a viable option. Like if you were in Boros, that would be a viable option in Boros to play it, right? You got 2 mana, maybe you splash for a 3rd, you get lucky and you play it for 3, but you could mentor it up. That wouldn't be a bad idea. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That's interesting. Gatekeeper Gargoyle is next. It's a 3/3 for 6 artifact creature gargoyle at uncommon. It's got flying. Enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each gate you control. Again, there wasn't a lot of gate love in this set. Like it's very like second, third tier type of thing. Like there's not a lot. I'm really hoping that the second or third, I hope they don't make us wait till the 3rd set. I really don't, because that just means that there's going to be a whole bunch of dead cards in the next set until we get the full set out. That's the one thing that is troublesome, having these overarching strategies that go from 3 different sets. Limited bombs on those so hard, because you don't have all the cards to play. So this might get better later on, but 6 mana for a 3/3, and then you're already playing slow because you're playing gates. So I don't know. Well, I mean, it does say for each gate you control, so it doesn't count the types of gates, right? So if I've got like 3 of the Silencia gates, it gets +3/+3, and they're counters. So that's We got 1 split card. We've got Flourish. Flower is 1 green or 1 white. Sorcery, uncommon. Search your library for a basic forest or plains. Reveal it. Put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Solid mana fixing. If you're like in Boros and you splash green, this is a great way to kind of search up for that missing forest. Vice versa, if you're in like Golgari and you're splashing white, it's a great way to search up that extra plains. Things like that. Good stuff. Flourish is 4 generic, 1 green, 1 white, so 6 total. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. This, oh my god, that is so expensive. That is way expensive, and it's a sorcery. That is a bad card. This is like literally like half of a card. Like Flower is like half of a card right there. Flourish is god awful. People will still lose to it because you're gonna play your Flourish, or your Flower to to cycle up your lands and stuff like that. So like people will draw this like on turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and they're like, well, shit, like I've already got my splash color. I don't need to cast Flower. I'm just gonna wait until I have a game winning attack, and then I'll swing in for 2 extra just to guarantee it or whatever. So it's going to be kind of like a win more card. It's not really cost effective, to be honest with you. When you draw this on turn 1 or turn 2, turn 3, you're going to play Flower for sure. So, all right, we got our gold cards. Let's see here. Camaraderie is next. It's sorcery at rare, 4 generic, 1 green, 1 white. You get 4 green and white. There we go. You gain X life, draw X cards, where X is the number of creatures you control. Creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Now that's a card, right? Green and white struggle with drawing cards. This is a great way to draw cards. Green and white have outstanding ways to build their creature base. Low creatures, whatever. Inexpensive creatures. They've got tapping mana creatures or whatever. Gaining life, that's kind of like incidental life, big whoop. But drawing cards and giving and antheming your creatures for 6 mana is great. Refilling your hand at turn 6, turn 7, great card. Tajik Legion's Edge is next. It's a 3/2 for 1 white, 1 red, and 1 generic. He's a human soldier, a rare. He's a legendary creature. He has haste, mentor, and he prevents all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. Then you could pay Boros colors for him to gain first strike until end of turn. That's a nice little threat of activation right there, right? Giving a creature first strike that has 3 power, that's a lot that they have to accommodate. They have to block with something that's a 4/4, right? Or at least 4 defense if they want to get rid of this guy. So that's definitely on the up and up. Mentoring, haste, all that good stuff. It comes down on turn 3. It mentors your turn 1 or turn 2 drop. It prevents all non-combat damage. So dealing multiple damage to creatures on the board. Fantastic card. Mnemonic Betrayal is next. It's 1 black, 1 green, 1 black, 1 blue, 1 generic, a mythic rare. It's a sorcery. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You may cast those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast those spells. At the beginning of your next end step, if any of those cards remain in exile, return them to their owner's graveyard. Exile the Betrayal. So, this is a great card. Right? You only can cast cards. You can only cast cards, right? You can't play land, which is unfortunate. You can spend mana, as needed. You have to pay 3 to do to actually cast a spell. So, like, you can't cast this on turn 3. You'll have to wait until they fill up their graveyard and then cast it. So it's kind of like you're not casting this early on. You're going to cast this late game, but this gets better late game, right? Especially in this limited, especially in this standard. There's going to be a lot of 3 out of the 5 abilities have to do with graveyard, right? Mentor's the one that doesn't, and neither does Convoke. The other 3 do. So being able to cast those cards is amazing, is great. And the jumpstart cards, I believe you're casting for their casting cost, not the jumpstart. So you don't have to discard the card, which is good. So good card. I foresee this card going up in value because it's gonna have some play in modern for sure. These type of shenanigans are just it's just a lot of fun. All right, last up, Erstwhile Trooper is next. It's a 2/2 for green and black and 1 generic. Zombie Soldier, common. Discard a creature. It gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Activate only once each turn. So you can make it a 4/4 with trample. That's actually pretty good. It's a discard outlet, right? So you can make sure that you fill your graveyard with creatures for the troll and things like that we talked about yesterday. Cards you don't need, cards that you can play, bring back or whatever. Graveyard shenanigans. You can also do it during your opponent's turn as well, so you can use it as a defensive thing. So don't forget that. Beam Splitter Mage is next. It's a 2/2 for 1 red, 1 blue. It's a wizard at uncommon. Whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell that targets only the Beam Splitter mage, you can, if you control one or more other creatures that the spell could target, choose one of those creatures, copy that spell. The copy targets the chosen creature. Wow, that's a mouthful. All right, so this only goes off if you've got two creatures, including the mage, right? So let's say, here's a funny one. Let's say you're splashing green, right? And you've got your beam splitter mage, and let's say you've got a 1/1, right? You cast the +3/+3/+3/+3/+3 spell, right, for 6 mana. Target the beam splitter, right? It's only targeting the beam splitter, and then you target the creature sitting next to it. So you get two creatures that get +9/+9 for the cost of 1. Right? You can anytime you can do that, right? Duplicate as many times as you want. So like you cast a spell, duplicate it. Cast another spell, duplicate it. You could do that as often as you want, not just one spell. Just keep in mind it has to only target the beam splitter though. You can't do an anthem effect or whatever. So solid card. And it's a 2/2 for 2, right? In a clan or in a guild that casts instant or sorceries on a regular basis. So all right, guys, that was the last day of spoilers, right? The last meaningful day, at least. Really do appreciate you watching. Make sure you get subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online. Leave us a comment. Tell us about what kind of, now that we've got almost the full spoiler out, right? All the rares, all the mythics, majority of the commons and uncommons. Tell me what cards you're looking forward to playing. Which ones do you really want to build a deck around in your limited pool? What are you looking for to play in limited sealed? Are you going to pre-release? I want to hear all about it. All right. Don't forget, Mondays we're going to do our Mana Drain podcast. That's our Magic the Gathering podcast. You can watch us over on twitch.tv/72DPI online. And we will see you guys next week for our pre-release guides. Have a great evening.